Welcome everyone to Service Design Drinks Berlin. Thank you so much if you're joining us from home online. This is the first time ever that we've done or tried to do this hybrid event where we have, we really wanted to do it in person. We were so excited that we could finally actually find a venue and try this fantastic venue for hosting us. And please bear with us if there's anything that's a bit clunky or not working, and bear with us while we figure it out, because you'd think there would be twice as much tech stuff, but it seems like there's 10 times as much because everything is a bit more difficult to do both online and in person at the same time. Let us know in the chat if something's not working, you can't hear us, or just something looks funny. And Adam is behind the camera there fixing things. Yeah, we'll get started. We have a little bit of intro first, and then it's actually really unfortunate, definitely for her, but as well for us, that our guest speaker is joining us, but she's not feeling well. So of course, in these times, safety comes first and comfort comes first. So she's joining us from online. So she'll be joining us very soon as well. Okay, so I'm going to get started with showing you a little bit of intro stuff. Welcome to Service Design Drinks Berlin. If you haven't joined us before, first, does everyone have a drink? This meetup really started years and years ago with, can we cheers? And we can't cheers. Cheers, everyone. Cheers. Started years ago, obviously, as an in-person meetup where there were drinks and yeah, networking and things to be had by all. We've still been doing it online, so we encourage you to get a drink at home. Welcome a few more people come in. Please sit down, be aware you'll be on Zoom and on the recording if you sit here, but not if you sit right over there. Not welcome. So everyone please grab a drink, even if it's just water or a cup of tea, it doesn't have to be alcohol, but we like this to feel like a comfy fireside chat where we're all having a discussion together. So this event is all about a bunch of things. We have a great expert guest speakers often. We often do other kinds of events as well that are more community, but every time we want to be inclusive, help people meet each other and network with each other, help people level up, share and learn from each other, and also connect and have drinks, even if it's over the internet. So the vibe of this whole event is really about community and about sharing and learning from each other. And we love to have people actually come and give a presentation for the first time here with us so that they can practice and learn and get feedback about a presentation or about something that they're working on. So if that's you, please think of us, write to us, put it in the chat if you like, but this is the vibe of the whole event. A quick bit about the four of us. There are three in the room today. Adam, you can't see. Marty is here, who's service design lead at Fjord. Mela is not with us, maybe joining from home, senior strategic designer at BCG Digital Ventures. Adam is behind the camera, is a senior service designer at Zalando. And what? Oh, yeah, okay. It's me, Adam. And I'm an innovation consultant. I'm a freelancer now. And have done really similar things to these guys as well. And we've been doing this and other events together for 5-6 years now. So that's a bit about us. And I want to say a big thank you to our wonderful hosts at PwC. This is the Experience Center in Berlin, and hand over the floor for a few minutes to hear from them. And we're so grateful that we could have an in-person event again for the first time in 18 months here at this wonderful, beautiful venue. So yeah, please take it away.
Thanks. We're also happy to host the community here again, finally, after much too long. Yeah, I'm Jochen. I'm service design lead at PwC. So some of you might know this space named with different ICS. So yeah, we lost that because we got taken over by PwC. And this, like for me as a designer, was quite interesting. Like PwC is not positioned quite well in the design community. But if you look closely, and I think that's interesting for us, there are some exciting opportunities for us. Because if you are a small agency, you might not be able to tackle bigger problems. If you have a big player in the back, it might be easier. And if you look at the problems that are around in the world at the moment, they are quite big, I would say. So on many levels, I just read the book from Bill Gates, where he was saying the Durchschnittstemperatur, so the average temperature on Earth was like 6 degrees lower in the ice age than it is now. And as all of us know, like we are moving towards a +6 degree future in this century. So yeah, I think we don't want to be curious how that world might look like. Yeah. So and
is this do you find yourself now? I can't remember how long it's been since the company changed, but are you really getting to work on these bigger problems now?
Yeah, and I mean it's also like experimentation for us,
yeah,
like
okay.
how we actually work together with such a bigger company, and how can we tackle those problems together.
Yeah.
So we're starting building something behind the scenes. So we also now have our new offering, Sustainable Innovator. You can also read some of the stuff on Medium, and yeah, there's not much what I can say at the moment, but we're working on some bigger things internally, but also externally. Yeah, so it's kind of exciting.
Maybe you can get the link to your Medium and Adam can put it in the chat for everyone to see as well. Cool.
And yeah, so what we are at the moment experimenting with is how to evolve basically human-centered design, what we have been doing for a while now, and basically think in ecosystems, and especially a bigger context as we have now actually enables us to reach out to that bigger ecosystem in order to not solve only problems for individuals, as service design has done it quite often in the past, but actually solve problems in a more systemic way, and they create a win-win for different actors in an ecosystem.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what we're up to.
That's really interesting where we have this focus on like, think of the user, the person that's on the other end, but maybe as you're describing this, thinking in this different perspective of the system, the ecosystem, how the people actually fit together rather than just the individual allows you to do something different.
Yeah, and then it becomes quite interesting and complex because all of a sudden you think about governments and regulators and supply chains.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it got more complex and more interesting.
Yeah, wonderful. And at the Experience Center here, where we are at the moment, is there anything you'd like to explain or tell people? Is this what the Experience Center kind of really does, work on these kind of sustainability and ecosystem projects with PwC? Yeah.
So we are doing product and service innovation. So this is what our positioning within the broader context is, and we're specifically focusing on sustainable innovation. So that's our value prop, and there are more experienced consultancy than only us. There's like a network worldwide.
Yeah, okay.
I think interesting to understand it's like a network organization, PwC. So we're not necessarily all do the same thing, but we are somehow connected, and every entity can do somehow its own thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like it's like gives you a lot of independence and freedom, but also challenging to align sometimes. But so this is how it is, and what we basically what the promise of PwC basically is we help you to comply to financial regulations, but what PwC now also wants to do, we help you to comply to ESG regulations.
ESG regulations?
So ESG, which is like a framework to measure your impact on the world.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like comparable with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, but it's rather a framework that has been used by, or is being used by companies.
Yeah, okay.
So as PwC is measuring those things, our job is to help companies. Well, if you do business like you do at the moment, you of course can measure your impact on those different factors, but if you really want to ramp up your impact and have more positive impact, you probably should think about reimagining what is your core offering and how would your core product and service offering look like in the future in order to be more sustainable.
Yeah, okay, cool. I didn't know this. This was really informative for me. I didn't know this about PwC and the Experience Center here. Thanks very much, Jochen, for giving us Come in, come in. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so to introduce tonight's event, I think we're going pretty well on time. Hopefully this is not a surprise. This is the event that was advertised. This event is all about purpose and culture, and we're really lucky to have Naz Pelen not in the room with us here, but joining us online. Actually, I don't know if she's. Yay, cool.
I'm here.
Joining us online. Hi Naz, I don't know if you can hear me already or see. And she's the head of design at Ecosia, which we're going to hear all about, and hear a lot of stories and learnings and methods and strategies talking about designing for purpose and designing culture for purpose and designing culture in general at different types of organizations. So quickly, before we introduce Naz, this is the quick agenda. So we're going to have this fireside chat. We're going to also be watching questions from the audience here online as well, and having some questions from the audience here. Please bear with us when the technology doesn't work, but I think everything's going well so far. And then we're going to have a bit of time at the end for more questions and discussion as well. But do pop your questions in the chat as soon as you have them, or raise your hand here if something's really relevant for what we're discussing. Okay, so hopefully technology works. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and maybe Adam can spotlight us so that we've got Naz on the screen as well. Oh, it's happening, it's happening. And welcome, Naz Pelen.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
I'm good. Sorry for not being there in person. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Unlucky.
really soft. We're seeing if we can try and make you a bit louder. Tell us in the. Oh.
Now there's echo.
Yeah, okay. Oh. Okay, one of those technical difficulties. Sorry, Naz, before you keep going, we make sure that everyone can hear you. Thanks very much. Online, could you tell us if you can hear Naz?
I can hear you. I can hear you well.
That's just fine. And the other audience members as well.
But it sounds like you cannot hear me.
That's just fine. It's because of the speakers. We're turning some knobs. We're doing some tech support. And we'll just make sure that the audio is coming in well.
But we can't see you.
And are people online saying they can hear Naz fine?
People are very quiet.
Come on, people, have a chat. Naz, can you say, hi, Service Design Drinks, it's great to be here.
Hi, Service Design Drinks. How are you doing?
They can hear us and they
No?
can see us.
Okay, thank you online. So it's good online, and Adam's just here in the audience. We can like barely hear you. I'm sorry for the technical stuff.
Speakers. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, okay.
So we're gonna.
Thanks, Naz. Yeah, we've known Naz actually, I'll keep talking because everyone can hear me, I guess.
Yes.
We've known Naz for, at least I have, like, I think we figured out it was 5 years or something like that. Naz was a coach mentor at one of the service jams, global service jams that we did here in Berlin. 1 or 2, Naz?
I think that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And was a coach and mentor already 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've been
Crazy, no?
friends and in the same communities ever since. So we're really excited to have her joining us here, because we're also really excited about this role that you have. It's not so brand new right now, but really recent. And to hear, especially about this big topic of purpose that I think is really relevant and meaningful to everyone, maybe in the world, but maybe. And culture too. We've all worked in these companies where had situations where it's felt like there's some break in the culture and people aren't feeling good, and there's something that we feel like we could do about that, but maybe no one's thinking about it enough. So we're really going to hear lots of stories from Naz from different companies as well. If we can get the
It's working?
Naz?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, good. Applause
Perfect.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we can all hear. Sorry, online people, I know you can already hear, but now.
No, don't worry about it. That's completely all right. It's a hybrid event. I am amazed that it's working.
Thank you.
We are too.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So to get started, Naz, could you tell us just briefly, like who you are, the company you work for, and what your role is generally there in a few minutes?
Yeah, happy to. So my name is Naz, N-A-Z. That's a Turkish name. So I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and I've been in Berlin for the last 5 years. I'm currently head of design at Ecosia. I hope you all know it. It's the search engine that plants trees. I took that role about like 10, 11 months ago. And my role is primarily, I will say, like taking care of the designers and the design team in Ecosia. So first and foremost, I'm a people manager. So I take care of the team. And then I represent design across the organization. So overall, I will say, like responsibility-wise, like I'm responsible of scaling the team from a size point of view, but also from an expertise point of view. I'm responsible of finding ways to elevate how we work and like what we produce as designers to make sure that we are delivering good design work. And I'm also responsible of kind of like connecting the dots with the rest of the organization to make sure that we have all the resources and everyone where we need. That's kind of how I will summarize it.
Awesome. I'm really excited to, I know we've already talked a bit to prepare this, but I'm really excited to hear some more stories about exactly the kinds of things you've been doing there. But before we do that, a couple of little quick kind of personal get to know you questions for everyone. What's your favorite meal when you either want to celebrate or you're a bit sad?
Pizza, 100% for both.
Do you make it yourself, or you just like, do you have a favorite pizza place in Berlin?
No, I always go to standard Mitte.
Yeah, okay. Pizza is a really good one. It has all the stuff. So what, in a general way, before we get into the topic of purpose and culture, what's your kind of big advice or best advice tip that you would just give to people in general about life and existence? just a really quick, easy one.
Like already entering into deep. I would say just enjoy the moment and like enjoy the small wins.
I think this is a really good one, and there's something that I think everyone really forgets, and when you forget it, it has a big impact. And yeah, when we actually remember that, we realize that there's something that's been going on that could have actually helped us with life all along, but we weren't really noticing those small wins. Cool. Your most prized or expensive possession?
My furniture. I started redecorating my flat during the lockdown, so
yeah, I think
like everybody else.
Yeah. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite piece of furniture in your place?
I have a really nice piece of shelf.
Yeah. Okay. I have to. Maybe you can come and give me some advice on that. What was your very first job or design job? But if you had another job that was your very first job, what was that?
I can tell both. So my very first job was a kind of like teacher/sitter in a summer camp, and I was supposed to teach kids English. This is in Turkey, so my English is considered good in Turkey. And I had to lie to them and tell them that I was native, so they wouldn't like switch back to English. So that was my first job, like lying to children. Sorry for that.
You had to lie to get the job as well, and then also lie to them.
No, that they knew already.
Great. And, yeah, and you had the other one as well?
Yeah, my very first design job was an ad that I found on Craigslist, and I joined two founders as the like designer/user researcher. And I remember telling my like flatmate that if I don't come back like in a couple of hours, they have to go to that location.
Wow. And did you stay there for a while? Maybe you're going to talk more about this actually. Was it just a little?
I did stay there. I did stay there for about like 6 months.
Yeah, okay. Craigslist, everyone. But this was ages ago. Maybe Craigslist isn't the place. I don't know. Does Craigslist still exist? Yeah, okay. Cool. That's something we all like should be thinking about more, like diversifying where we look for jobs, even Craigslist. Okay.
Craigslist.
Yeah. maybe it worked out really well in your case, and maybe we shouldn't recommend that actually. For those who don't know, like maybe actually we're the lucky few that kind of know a bit about your design journey. Can you give us a quick rundown, just kind of that, your LinkedIn basically, just the different jobs you've had, so we can get a picture?
Yeah. So the first one was a practice job. You won't see that on my LinkedIn anymore, but like I stayed there actually some time. That didn't really work out. That, I mean, like this is kind of like where I started learning how to design, because I'm not a designer by education. I studied engineering and didn't design until I got into my master's like degree, more or less. And there I was actually like programming, and at the same time, like on the side, like designing and user testing. And then I realized, hey, this field exists and you can actually do this as a job. Hence the Craigslist ad and finding a job in a startup. But that's the first job that I started at. Then I joined an agency in Istanbul, and I stayed there for quite some time. And this is when I started concentrating more on like e-commerce and fintech clients, which eventually like made me jump to like in-house and in an e-commerce startup in Barcelona. I stayed there very little, and then actually moved to Berlin because of Zalando. Like a lot of other people, I already see Johan in the room, and like Adam is over there. Yeah. So I stayed in London for some time, worked there as an individual contributor, but this is also like when I realized I want to do the switch to a managerial track. And I did that when I switched right before Ecosia to McKinsey Design. So there I was basically like leading teams and like leading design projects and like with like external clients. And that was my last gig right before Ecosia. So now I'm in Ecosia.
Yeah, I love these last three steps, including the one you're on now. Zalando, a big product tech company, and then McKinsey, huge, but with that different lens of the agency, like client consulting work, and now to this like smaller product, but also with a completely different. They feel like three different steps. I'm really looking forward to digging into them with you. And I wanted to ask one question. Do you remember the thing that made you do this switch to management, or think for the first time, I think I want the management track? I know we didn't, this is just a random question for
you. Sorry. I think I do, because I started, like you also mentioned this, like I was mentoring in all this like jams or like hackathons and things like that. Then I was also like mentoring junior designers in my team. And this started becoming something that I really enjoyed, like to the degree of like almost enjoyed more than like hands-on designing. And I think that was a switch for me. And like I actually really realized like my thing was actually like just to like lead people and like care about them and care about their growth and like seeing other people growing.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I find that kind of personally interesting as well. I don't know if anyone else, but I feel like at some point, or I don't know if other people have had this thought already, like there's this kind of idea pops in of a decision of like, wait, and you maybe can't go both ways. You're actually talking about this kind of recently, Nati, as well. Like maybe you need to choose like one direction or the other, whether you like have your hands on and build the actual products, and maybe you still get to do a bit of either one in different positions, but or whether you help others to do those things more effectively. I really find this very interesting. Okay, so now what is it like at working at Cozier? How has it been joining the team, especially joining in this? You just joined 9 months ago, did you say? So you joined in this pandemic situation. What's that like, and what's it like at Cozier?
So I will go chronologically. I joined in November last year, so that was I think lockdown 2.0. So yeah. I didn't see anyone. I just like joined online. I had a fully remote onboarding. I didn't get to meet my team for a very long time. I didn't get to meet anyone else. So like for me, which I'm very extrovert and I really take energy from like working together with people like in the same room, I have to say that was quite challenging. Like I think it made things like slower than usual. Like especially because it's a like leadership role, like it's all about actually getting to know people and like connecting with people in the first couple of months. So I think that part was quite interesting, and I'm not sure if it's an experience I want to repeat again, like this fully remote onboarding and lockdown, joining a company, but somehow like it worked out. And I think right now, like if I look back, yes, things took a bit more time, but right now it feels pretty much like home. And it's a very interesting company because, like you said, like McKinsey was huge. Like overall organization, yes, but also design team was very much distributed, like lots of people and different culture. So Ecosia, in contrast, is a smaller organization. Everyone is very like driven by what we are doing. Everyone is very caring, really enjoys working for Ecosia. So it's like really family-like, and I'm really enjoying it.
How many people is it actually?
I should know this. I think we are 90.
No,
because it's under 100. So like we are, I think 90 right now. But like new people are joining, and we have sometimes freelancers, etc. So it changes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We have one question from the registered participants, and it fits with what you were just saying. So how did you manage to make these personal connections in spite of the social distancing?
A lot of one-on-ones, I will say, and I think I really relied heavily on like team exercises and activities like that were done online. So really getting to know like everyone individually in one-on-ones, and like you those one-on-ones actually sometimes for work, yes, but mostly on understanding like what drives them, like what's the reason they even joined Ecosia, like is it still the same, like are there things that are making them happier than others, what are their values, like things like that. And I also did these things like with the team as well. And I have to say those helped, but I will still assume that if it was a bit more in person, it would have taken like less time to get to know people. But in the end, like it's also not really about the time. It's just a different way of working that we all kind of got used to. And I think next time round, probably I will do things a couple of things more differently. But like overall, it's just like now it's a new way of working, and you just have to get used to it. It just takes time, like to learn it.
But so many companies are going full remote now. So even in 5 years, all these things you've done here, where you're like, oh, I would do that differently next time. This might still be the case for us in the future, that we're doing onboarding and meeting teams and connecting with people, all of our colleagues online.
Yeah.
There was something I wanted to, oh, do you have any favorite, like you said, sometimes use activities? Were there any like ones that we could actually kind of look up and put links in for people? Or did you just make some quick activities up yourself to do, just like finding out their passions, or these kinds of things?
No, there's actually, do you know this, like Hyper Island, the agency? Yeah. So I rely on their like toolbox quite a lot, and they have one values exercise that is really nice. Like you start by listing 10 values, and then you kind of like dial it down to 3.
What was it
and
called?
Now you have, I think it's like finding your value or something like that.
Okay, cool. Martin's searching. Sorry, go on.
I can send the link afterwards as well. Like that's one that I really make use of. Then I have a kind of individual development plan template that is a mix of like my templates, but also other friends, basically, that I use for creating an individual development plan that is like relying on like strengths, weaknesses, like skills and values, and like personal vision and things like that.
Awesome. And this is what we love to do in these events is, if you're watching online and Naz is talking about something and you've got, oh, you should read this article, or here's an exercise that's really great for that, please post it in the chat. And if you're sitting here, like, remember it, maybe, or like yell it out even, and we can look, Marty can look it up, or Marty and Adam both. And this is what we love, not only having this connection, this meetup, like hearing from an expert guest speaker, but also giving you a whole list of links that people have shared and tips that people have given throughout the whole event from the whole community. So please use the chat and give us links so that everyone can make use of them. And as Naz is talking, as we're having this chat, Please also post your questions because we'll either pick them up and ask them right away, or we'll have time for more just questions at the end. So please post your questions in the chat as soon as you have them, or raise your hand. Wonderful. So this was kind of getting to know you, Naz, and getting to know and getting this kind of picture of you and this, the role that you have now, but also previous roles. Now we have two kind of themes or topics which are purpose and culture, which is the name of this event. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about each of those, and we'll have this chat about them. So the first one is, we've called it building a culture around purpose. So this is the one that's more about purpose, making decisions or changing the way you do things, and building a culture around purpose. So first, I'd love to ask you, what does purpose actually mean to you?
I like this question because I think there's a misconception that the purpose should be novel or like above self-interest. It's this kind of like selfless, like very, very loyal cause, sort of. But I mean, I will say that's actually not the case. Like, it's completely fine to have different types of purposes. And especially like if you think about work, why you show up to work, it's okay not to have this like novel altruistic purpose. Like, I think that's the person that I want to say, because a lot of people feel like unless they are working for this like novel reason, like it's kind of, I don't have a purpose, like what am I doing here? And that's really not true. Yes, like I'm currently working for an organization that is a bit different, and we will, I guess, come to that afterwards, but like that's the first kind of disclaimer I wanted to do. And like for me, if I think about purpose, it's really like why you show up. And like that reason might be because, I don't know, it provides you flexibility with your family and with your friends, like that's fine. It provides good compensation, totally fine, like no shame about that. Maybe it's the mission of the company, but like in the end, it's really what grounds in your decisions and what helps you to move forward, I will say.
Yeah, I really love this, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that before, that purpose doesn't have to be this like huge altruistic thing, because that kind of takes a lot of pressure off. I think it's a really, really common struggle, life struggle, that people have to kind of feel like they have to find their one true purpose in life, and for sure some people actually do and have this really strong driving force that's something else that's outside of themselves. But I feel like that's what people think it is only supposed to be, and I've never heard anyone actually describe it before, that it just might be like what gets you, how did you phrase it, like what gets you to go to work, what makes you feel motivated to do something, and that might be something really simple, like it's fun or it works for me and my family, or it's low stress. Yeah. I love this so much, thank you. For you, what role does this is now about the Cozier, what role does this purpose-driven culture of Ecosia, and maybe you can tell us what that is, this purpose-driven culture. What does this role of purpose-driven culture at Ecosia have for the design culture? Sorry. Yeah, what's the role of this purpose-driven design culture?
Yeah, so in line with what I said before, in the case of Ecosia, it is actually quite ambitious purpose, and it's very altruistic. So I will say, like, to begin with, like that really brings a very unique set of people together. And I don't know if you know this, but actually, like, our founder gave up the right to sell the company like for profit in 2018. So like we cannot sell Ecosia, and everyone that works there is actually working to fight climate change and plant more trees, and it's not for making profit for the company or for our like C-level or for our shareholders or boards. And I think that's really interesting. And I didn't know that like before I joined. I was like, wow, okay, this is going to really like change the culture a lot, and it really is different. Because I will say, like, it really generates then a set of people that are motivated by change. So when we are like talking about the purpose of the people in the company, like there is a lot around like change and doing good. They're quite bold. people don't really shy away from like holding mirrors or like saying things as it is, both like internally and externally. And like sometimes if you follow our like social media communication, etc., like you will see examples like that. And what this means in practice sometimes is like some topics that maybe in other companies will be postponed or will be kind of like not a priority, like for example, diversity, equity and inclusion, like they are actually like topics that for a size like Ecosia, they are quite in the front line. And same is true for a design team. Like when it comes to design practices, you will think, for example, it's a team of now 7 people. I mean, maybe accessibility and inclusive design, like it doesn't need to come first, but actually like these are things that we are constantly talking about. Like we are organizing basically like learning days, inviting guest speakers, like trying to apply it in daily practices. I think before, when I joined, Johan was talking about like sustainability and designing for like good of the world. Like that's something that we keep like as an internal compass all the time as designers. Like we question what we are building, why we are building it, like what's the metric we are looking at, and like it's normal to have conversations around like who are our partners, how is the money going to be used, and things like that. So I think that's how, in a nutshell, I will summarize it like that.
Yeah, I can imagine. At least I've been in many situations, maybe really most people have, where you work in a company that's got a mission, but also there's the make money mission, and then sometimes, not even sometimes, often, the two things are like at odds with each other. It's like, oh, but we just have to do this because this is the project that's the bread and butter and we need it, so we just have to do that. Oh, but are we doing it the right way? No, it doesn't matter, we just have to do it. And then sometimes the mission itself can actually kind of fall short because the company can't keep existing if it doesn't make enough money. I'm guessing this still somehow is a factor because the company has to be sustainable in itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think like that's the, like, we have a very nice North Star metric, which is really the like number of trees planted.
So what was the last thing you said?
The North Star metric that we have is the number of trees planted, which is kind of perfect because obviously we can only plant trees if we have revenue.
Yeah.
But the revenue is coming from the actions that the users are taking.
Yeah.
So that ties nicely. Like, yes, of course, we have to be self-sufficient and like we have to make money in order to plant trees. But like that's how it works in the case of Ecosia.
It would be nice to have a North Star like this, number of trees planted, and every project I'm guessing is like, okay, how will this affect the number of trees planted? And rather than how will this align us strategically? How will this like get us more profit? Yeah, okay. This is really interesting. Maybe I won't work for Cozier.
Hey, we are hiring.
And we have to put this link in as well, which will at the end we'll also get if other people are hiring other companies. But yeah, we'll put this link in. The Cozier are hiring everyone. Yeah, so that's the next topic. Actually, maybe that's why you said that. Yeah, how do you do recruitment based on this? How do you do recruitment based on that culture and based on that purpose, and what role does this culture and purpose have on actually hiring the right people?
I think there's a couple of traits that we look for generally. I mean, to begin with, I think in any company you recruit for the company culture anyway. So in our case, maybe the criteria is a bit more different because we really look for people who believe in the mission of fighting climate change. Ideally also like showing interest like in their daily lives to do something around it. Like not everyone needs to be an activist, although we do also have quite a lot of people who are very outspoken in the topic, but it should be like something that you care about. And like we also look for people who understand the value that the value of the work that they are doing, like beyond the workspace and like beyond the things that we are building sort of. And they are really like long-term thinkers for the future and for the future of the world. And other criteria that we look for are, I mean, it's also startup environments, so really like people who can self-start, on the other hand, people who also are able to maybe question like traditional business practices and like really want to like make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and have you had a decision? I don't know how many people you've needed to be part of hiring personally since you started there, but has there been a decision where this like someone is kind of more skilled, but the other person is kind of more fitting to the purpose and culture, and it's been a really hard decision or something like that?
So I didn't have it personally. I think we are also quite lucky because every time like we open a position, like everyone that applies is like already like very much invested in this. So I didn't have it personally, but I know that it happens in other situations.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
What roles are you hiring for right now, by the way?
So I'm currently.
No, but I don't know. Like, we've got an audience here. I'm really interested. But do you know off the top of your head, or should we just put the link in? Maybe there's a bunch.
No, I'm only hiring for two. I'm only hiring for two right now. I'm hiring for a UX copywriter, and I'm looking for a design system engineering lead. Yeah. If you know anyone.
Cool. Okay, we'll put the links in there. Sorry, I'm reading my questions. What are the, I'm guessing it's not like nothing is ever perfect, wonderful, better than all the other options. What are the downsides, any downsides or risks when it comes to actually being and working in an organization that's driven by purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of two, and they're kind of related. And I will say like it's where to start and also like where to draw the line. When it comes to where to start, I think especially in our case, like, I mean, it's out there, like the world is, the temperatures are rising, climate change is real, like it's happening. And I think for our case, like it's very easy to fall into climate anxiety in a way, like everyone else around us, but almost as an organization. So like we know that we are running out of time, we wanna move faster, we wanna like plant more trees, we wanna make a bigger impact. And like the ways that you can do this like are quite open. So like sometimes that really leads to this like sense of urgency, but also a bit of like helplessness, like where do I start, what do I do? And there actually this North Star metric of like how many trees you can plant, that really helps, because then you start investing in like, okay, like which one is going to plant more trees. But I think like sometimes prioritization can definitely be an issue, and like you start like, okay, we have to do everything at the same time and we have to do it yesterday. So like that's definitely one problem. The second one is this like where to draw the line, because with also like climate change comes a lot of climate injustice. So you can actually start digging your finger to different places, and it can kind of come up as like being against everyone and everything. And like that's also, I mean, this is mostly the job of like marketing and communication teams in terms of like how we position ourselves and like where we actually talk, but we're not. But like internally, also like in terms of the like employees that we have, like we can be quite like outspoken, and like it can really come, it can be sometimes like difficult to define our boundaries.
Yeah, and things can get heated because everyone is so passionate. Exactly.
Exactly.
Has a sense of purpose. Yeah. Okay. This is two downsides that I wouldn't have thought of, because the glowing kind of, which is I'm sure still overwhelmingly true compared to many other companies, but it feels like working in a company where most of the people who even apply are really passionate and really caring and want to make a difference in the world. It's like, that sounds like idealistic heaven. But yeah, it's nice to remember the other sides that come with it, which you can't really just turn off. If you want the passion, you've got to have the other stuff that comes with it as well, or manage these things. On purpose still, do you have a definition of your own purpose as a designer, as yourself, not just at Ecosia?
I think it's evolving as I also mature as a designer. I wouldn't be able to kind of like come up with a motivational purpose right now, but I know that I was telling also before, like it's really around empowering others around me. And that's kind of the common thread that I always come back to, but it's changing over time.
Yeah, this is a really hard question to answer. It's one of those life existence questions.
Yeah.
That's really hard to answer, and maybe you have an answer today and it changes tomorrow, or it changes every day. Do you know, you already mentioned this exercise, now I've forgotten the name of it, but something with like finding your value, but do you know any other, you don't have to, if you can't think of the names now, we'll get them from you later, but really resources and tools, or even articles, or like you've mentioned already, the Kuiper Island kind of toolkits. Do you have any things that are really specific about kind of this purpose or culture, or especially if you're helping people define their purpose that you use a lot?
I don't know if you know the School of Life.
Yeah.
So they have pretty good articles, and they have a nice book like A Job to Love. That was pretty nice.
The Age of Love or the Edge of Love?
A job to love.
A Job to
A
Love.
Job to Love.
Yeah.
Cool. Complete. Yeah. Cool. Great. Yeah. Anything else?
This is very like anti-designer of me, but also Harvard Business Review actually has really good articles on this.
Okay, around purpose and kind of career purpose.
About purpose, about company cultures, about like how to also find your own purpose. I don't remember the links now, but I can dig them up later if you want to.
I would never have gone there, so that's really awesome. This is exactly what this is kind of great for, is that someone mentioned something that you just might have dismissed because you wouldn't, like, I wouldn't have thought of that as a place to go to for purpose and stuff.
Yeah.
Harvard Business Review.
Harvard Business Review, exactly.
I'm just finding the link now. Okay, we're going to go on to the next theme or topic, which is more focused on culture, even though we have been talking about that a little bit as well. And I still don't hear, maybe there's questions kind of coming in the chat that we're saving for later, but please do think of these questions and post them as we're going. Cool. So this theme is kind of more about how to actually build culture, how to be a culture builder, and we'd love to hear obviously your actual experiences, some stories, some tools and things that you use, and maybe also things that you would recommend for someone who's not necessarily in your position of being a leader as well. So first question is, this might be hard to tell a story about because you might not want to name names and explain details, but have you been on a design team that had a bad culture? And what did you do about it, if anything? And what advice would you give to other people in this situation?
So I would say I haven't been in a team that had like bad or toxic culture, but I've been in places where people were quite demotivated or they were quite stressed.
All of us, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm gonna speak like as a lead first, and then maybe we can speak as like, okay, what if you are not the lead but just a team member? Like, what are the things that you can do? I think that as a lead, the first thing that I will say is like it's quite important to understand that there are like different reasons. Let's say for low morale, and you can't take all of them on your own. Like it's also as a lead, it's not your duty to solve every problem. And sometimes I think, especially if you are like a kind of early manager, you tend to forget that quite a lot. So I will just say that like it's not everything is your problem, but of course there are things that you can do. The first thing is I think really understanding like what's the cause, like where is this coming from, and like then you can like basically before jumping into action, like you just have to figure out like what's the cause of this, and there are different things that you can do as a lead. Like let's say if it's like causes like compensation, the level of your role, hearing feedback, hearing praise from others, like that's something that you can definitely address as a lead. Even if it's more like interesting causes, like I don't know, like maybe your team member feels like they don't have enough challenges, or the work that they are getting is not meaningful, or I don't know, like they haven't shipped something in ages, like that's actually quite demotivating. They are not feeling autonomous, like those are definitely things that you can also direct influence on. And the first thing that you can do is really, it sounds easy, but like start having open conversations. And sometimes those conversations are going to be very awkward. That's fine. Like that happens. And you have to build this trust, like also like with your team member to be able to like talk about these things. And sometimes it also takes time. That's also completely fine. But like that's the start. And then the solution is really different for like everyone. So I don't think there's like a holy grail of like do this and then things will be better. But like the thing I will say is like find the cause, talk about it, work individually with like every team member.
Yeah. That must be like, is it like a lot of one-on-one conversations, but also things with a team or like group as a whole, and then
I think it depends. I think it depends because like if it's like a very like individual case, then that's obviously one conversation. But if it's really around the team, like maybe the team that you are in is actually having problems, then like again, I think acknowledging the problem is a good place to start. And also as a lead, like this, like there's a lot of pressure, like to be like, you know, it's the best team, there are no problems, like everyone is doing great, like just like taking that pressure from yourself and just like acknowledging the fact that, hey, things can go south like anytime. Let's just basically like put them to table, like make use of, I don't know, like retrospectives and things like that to actually like address the problem. Yeah. And then start like solving the problem collectively as a team. Because again, like it's not your problem only as a lead to solve the team's problems, like it's a team effort.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. This would actually, I love this idea of retrospectives. And if someone hasn't heard this term, maybe we can, if anyone in the audience actually has some links to retrospectives that they use, because there's different methods. So it's like this, looking back at what we've done and how it went and what we would change. But there's lots of different workshopy methods and different ways to do this. That would be cool to have a few links in the chat. Oh yeah,
there's an interesting follow-up question to what you were just saying. So have you ever encountered team members that don't want to open up for any given reason? Because all of the things that you're saying are based on the fact that eventually they open up. So how do you deal with that?
That's a really good question. And so maybe it sounded more like everyone is opening up and we are like one happy family and everyone knows everything about each other, but like that's not what I meant. And I think this happens quite a lot. Like, and there's also I will say there is a fine line between like professional reasons and personal reasons. And the personal reasons, like you can be there for everyone and you can make sure that like they don't think about work if they're in a personal situation that requires more attention. But like that's personal and that can be left aside. And if there are people who doesn't want to open up, like you can't force anyone to participate in things, and that's fine. And I think again, like letting go of that idea that like everybody needs to behave the same in the team, like that's a really good place to start. If it's damaging the rest of the team, then that's probably a conversation that you have to have one-to-one. That's going to be a difficult conversation, but like it's also quite important to acknowledge that and do it in a constructive way and in a way that comes from like a caring place and not accusing or not assuming. Like I think those two things are quite important. Like you don't know why someone is not opening up. Like it might be because of a lot of reasons. So like really, if you can understand that, that's great. And if you see that like over time, this is still not changing, then I think maybe like as a lead, you have to kind of ask yourself as well, like, is this okay for the rest of the team? Like, do I want to keep this behavior? And also kind of like start reflecting on your own a bit. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you. This question came from the audience. Okay. Oh, and I had this note. I don't know if you noticed. I've written out notes from before that you're a lead, and these are all. I'm not a lead. I don't manage any kind of team, but I feel like I got a lot from what you said. But also, if I feel like you have some influence, some power to say, oh, I hear a problem and I can influence this in some way. I can ask, I can what's the word? Support my team by saying, hey, my team needs this. Advocate for your team. But if you're not a lead, especially if you're really actually kind of new in a role or in a junior position, is it true actually? Because I kind of added this to our notes from before, that something you can do is talk to your lead and talk to the without waiting for a one-on-one or without waiting for the right moment. But I'm not a lead. What do you think about this? Would you rather kind of moderate this yourself, or do you encourage people to say, please come to me as soon as you have something to talk about? Yeah.
Sorry. So if we are talking about kind of like okay, you as a team member, let's say that like you are, I don't know, not in a good place for some reason, like what do you do? Is that the question?
If me as an employee is like sensing, hey, something's not working, I'm unhappy, this isn't fair, this isn't working for me, something about this, like maybe culture, maybe interaction with others, or like I'm not, maybe my purpose, I'm not excited anymore. I feel like a lot of people, and I myself have done this many, many times and started changing this, instead of sitting there being grumpy and getting annoyed at your colleagues, or getting annoyed at your company, or and feeling angry, or then instead of doing that, like maybe you can just say, hey, manager, lead, boss, can I please talk to you about this, about something?
So I think also what I wanted to acknowledge is like everybody is going to get grumpy at some point at work. Like that's okay. Everybody does that. I do that as well. Like it's okay. It's out of time and at work, so only normal. But I think like if you have built enough trust with your colleagues and your lead, I think this is something that you should definitely bring before kind of burning bridges or burning yourself. Because sometimes also like when you're in that mindset, like it really feels like there's nothing to do, like you can't really control anything, like what's going to change, it's been like this all the time, but there are actually quite a lot of things that can be done. And it's like also like not to underestimate the power of kind of like the peer network, right? Because even if let's say that you're a like junior designer and you just joined, like you do have a peer network, and if like 5 junior designers are doing the same thing, you're actually like then building the culture yourself. Yeah. If all 5 of us say the same thing to your lead, then yes, like that's also definitely a very loud and clear message that things need to be changed.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I wanted to hear this perspective of someone that is on the receiving end. So maybe not every time someone's grumpy, they go to you and say, hey, change this. But I love this, like using your peer group to actually kind of discuss and see if other people are having the same experience, and then bringing things up. And I've been in a situation where I've let myself get to the point where I'm just ready to leave the company without saying anything about it. And maybe this is the kind of like more the trigger of like, okay, I'm thinking about leaving. Maybe I should actually talk about this. Could be, don't go away as soon as you're grumpy, but go talk before you leave the company kind of situation. Okay, a couple more questions about culture. Do you think that you started somehow actively designing culture or having an influence on culture of companies that you've worked in or teams that you've worked in before you actually went into a leadership position?
I think this really ties to like what I was saying before. Like I really do believe that it's not just the like team leads or like overall company leadership that does that builds the culture. Like of course there's a direction given, but like in the end it's like everyone that's working in that team or in that company that's like collectively building the culture. So I will say like I did that. Probably all of you are doing it right now, independent of your like level and role. So yeah, I will say definitely, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I think I really agree. We probably just actually don't realize what's changed or what impact we've had. You know, if we've been in a team for 6 months, a year, 2 years, what impact we had because we see things changing around us, not realizing what we're actually doing just by being there. Because our experience is only from that view of seeing it when we're actually there. I love this. This might be a hard one to answer. I know, yeah. The question is, how much time do you actually invest in doing this kind of culture building or defining culture in some way? So I don't know if that's hard to define but is it possible to say, oh, X% of my time is basically spent on this? Maybe not. Yeah.
Percentage level, complicated, but I will say, I think most of my time is really on more like doing, maybe like without realizing at some points as well, like you were mentioning before. The more like planning part, I will say happens a lot when I reflect, like when I reflect on the quarter, like what we achieved, how we achieved it. Like that's one part of like, that's my time to highlight things that maybe are aligned with what I want to have in the team and what the team already has, and maybe like some things that are not. I also, I think about this more, like every time I open a new role and I start thinking about like who to hire, because like to be fair, like Ecosia design team is quite small. So every hire really counts also in terms of like the soft skills and then the like characteristics they are going to bring with them. And then recently, actually, this was like very active thinking, because we started basically crafting the first like growth framework for designers in Ecosia. And of course, there are topics around like behavior. And there is like when you have a chance like as leadership to really like give your input and then like start getting feedback from everyone. So that was very like consciously, okay, like we are defining it.
And this is growth framework for employees to grow inside the company?
Yeah. Like your typical like levels in design, what you need to go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that would be really interesting to, I never even thought that that's a thing to design, but of course it is, like designing how you define the different levels of different ways that you can grow, and then helping people work towards those. And yeah, that would be really interesting. I'm jealous.
Yeah. Is there anything particular about this growth framework in this exercise of coming up with a growth framework that is somehow connected to the fact that you're working at a purpose-driven company? Does it influence a bit how you think about the growth of a designer in that company?
Really good question. I think it influences more on the like communication and behavior levels. But when it comes to like design skill sets, like the craft, like then yeah, it stays pretty much the same as everywhere.
Makes sense.
Okay, we have one final thing and then it's Q&A time. So if you were trying to hold on to some questions, like try and recall them now. The last question I have for you, Naz, before we do general Q&A, is that a general ending point, like a general takeaway for people. If people are wanting to be more purposeful in their career, what advice would you have for them? And actually, I don't know if you saw, but I wrote some notes that I forgot to talk to you about under there, so you can ignore them or yeah, and just say what you were thinking. And I wrote these questions for you. But yeah, what takeaways for people to help them think about their own purpose in their career or about culture?
So one thing I realized, I think also like over the years, is that I think you start getting maybe more purposeful or like understanding your like strengths and weaknesses, like the longer you stay in one career. So I will kind of like turn it around maybe and say, hey, like this shouldn't be an exercise that you do because you are getting like this feedback or that feedback over time and then you start knowing it, but it should be like something that you do intentionally, like really kind of like trying to, yeah, understanding your like limitations, your like strengths, how can you build on them, and what are the things that you enjoy doing, what are the things that you absolutely hate doing, thinking about like the type of companies you want to work in, like what are the things that are actually like that are calling you, and maybe the things that you say, okay, I love this company, but like side, I really don't resonate with that. So even kind of like mind mapping all of those and like trying to come up with maybe like high level clusters of who you are and who you are not, and doing this on your own before anyone asks you or before you kind of get this feedback repeatedly. I think that's a really nice start. And then the second thing is like really asking for feedback. Like I think that's really like sometimes we get very stuck in thinking like who we are and like having a second opinion like always helps. And whether that's feedback on your work or feedback on like who you are as a person at work, that's quite it's quite useful.
That was awesome advice. I wish we were actually, we're recording this, it's okay, but like, I wish I was writing this down.
Yeah, somebody's even saying, Naz, please create a template for this self-mapping and share it.
Yeah, homework for you. And there's a great, I will add a link to this towards like the end when we finish, but there's a great character strengths kind of assessment, one of these quizzes you can take, but it's been made by psychologists to understand your strengths and it's not your strengths and your weaknesses, it's just your strong traits so that you can just be aware of them and then use them and not worry about the things that you're not as strong at, but just use the things you're strong at and go, oh, there's a tough situation. That's right, I have a strength, this might help. It's amazing. I'll find that link as well. I think it's called Via Character or Via something like this character.
Yeah.
Do you know it? Yeah.
There's a famous course in Coursera. It's the science of well-being.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's one of the links that we share.
Okay, fantastic. Cool. We can find this as well. Did you catch this one, Marty?
No.
Okay, so it's Q&A time. Did we have any questions from the registration stuff that we didn't get to that we're still kind of trying it?
There was only one that I think we did not cover that would be interesting, but
yeah, let's take other questions and we see if
exactly. Let's use this chance to have questions from people.
15 minutes or 12 minutes left. Adam, when you held up questions, did you say you've got some from the chat?
No, Nick has a question.
Nick has a question. No, you're just like
Just being a dick.
Adam's just being Adam. Yeah. Does anyone have a question or just something you'd like to hear about? Yes.
Hello, Naz. Nice to see you. Thanks. I definitely could relate to the point around like purpose-driven companies struggling with prioritization and passion. Like it's pretty much the same problem I have at our company as well. It's like continuous daily challenge. I was curious about how you sort of, whether you have heated debates or conflicts, because you know you have a bunch of passionate people that have varying degrees of varying opinions on what direction to go in, and like how do you navigate disagreements or conflicts in the team about like what direction to take? And like maybe it's also related to like decision making. Like do you have a structure for decision making? Like is it more consensus driven or more like hierarchical?
So if I understood correctly, the question is what's our decision making structure? Yeah,
and how do you manage conflict if like people disagree with certain decisions or directions?
Yeah.
Did you get that? The microphone is kind of weird in the room, but should I repeat it a bit?
How do I manage conflict and
with all these passionate people that are at the company? Yeah.
So I think I can answer for the design team. So basically, for us, we have very clear roles and responsibilities in terms of like who needs to make a decision in which area. So my team is like a mix of embedded designers and designers working horizontally across like topics, which is basically user research design systems. So you have very clear ownership, and then you know who exactly needs to make that decision. And like everybody has the autonomy to make that decision. So I think in design team, it's solved in that way. And like one more thing that we also do is I really like separating debates or like discussion ideation from decision making. Like you don't need to use the same session for ideating 50 different things and then having a disagreement between which one are we going to do, and maybe dot voting with 3 dots on things and then saying, okay, like this is it. Like, yes, sometimes it works, but also like sometimes you really need to kind of pause and like really question, okay, is that the correct decision? And then that's the moment where actually that decision is transferred to the owner. And then the owner needs to like articulate their thoughts, look at the picture from different angles. Sometimes that owner is me. Sometimes that owner is an embedded designer in the team. And of course, like they will check with me, but like it's not It's not a hierarchical decision-making structure. It's also not consensus. It's just like clearly outlining the process, dedicating owners, and making sure that like everybody knows their accountabilities.
I love this so much as this answer and awesome question, that having workshopy tools isn't the solution to everything, and having people vote with dots isn't the solution to everything. Having one person who's the decision maker and makes all the decisions on their own doesn't really work either. But it sounds like what you're describing is this combination using some like brain thinking to use these kind of prioritization tools, or using sessions where people just get to voice their opinions, but the person who's owning it and responsible for it still gets to take all of that information in and hear it all, and then still has the responsibility to make that call. It's like lots of different systems working together as one. Awesome. And we had some questions in the chat.
Never mind, let's just answer.
Oh, cool. Adam, did you know?
How many trees?
How many trees have you planted?
Oh, wait, it's changing every day. Let me just check this. So currently we are in 133 million. And by the end of this year, this number is going up.
Every day, every minute, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question about the trees.
Oh,
Do you make first like a quick assessment?
I'll repeat it.
What type of trees should be planted or not? Because, you know, the ecosystem, when which they're planted is very important as well. So a little bit of a evaluation of what type of trees would be something, yeah, I'm curious if you guys do this.
did you catch it with the volume?
I think so.
What's
Is it
the-
around how many?
Do you decide like which, or how do you do it? Which types of trees are the best ones to actually plant to have the most impact?
Or a bit of a ecosystem or
In different ecosystems and things like
Yeah.
yeah. Do you evaluate ecosystems to decide which trees to plant where?
Yes, that's not exactly my department's job, but we do actually have a team for that. So we have a team that is purely focused on tree planting. That's in-house in Ecosia, like the people who are responsible of selecting the locations and partners. And then we have external partners that we work with that are working in the locations that we identified. And we always plant in biodiversity hotspots. We never plant monoculture unless the spot that we are planting actually is like calling for it. There's a lot of detail to this. Tree planting is not as simple as one might think. And there is also actually great articles around this in our blog. So if you're interested in it, I will advise you to just go to blog.ecosia.org and read all about our tree planting methods.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Follow up to this.
Yeah.
Just
Try and speak really loudly, or you can come down here if
Yeah.
you want to. Yeah.
No, I can.
Right, it's up to you.
We can
How much of that information around trees informs your design decisions? How much of that complexity gets translated into some of your design decisions?
Did you hear?
Yeah, so if I heard correctly, the question is how much of the complexity of tree planting has an effect on our design decisions?
Yes.
That's a very interesting question because it did have an effect on our design decisions. We recently started redesigning basically our landing page, and that's where we are talking about like who Ecosia is, like what we do, how we do it. And we did have conversations with our like tree planting team and to understand actually kind of the backstage actions of it. And the designer in the team like had to translate those into kind of like snackable, understandable content for users that is still going to be appealing and is going to like hit sweet spot of, it's not as simple as you might think, but still like simple enough to understand. So I think that was like one use case that happens like already like in the time that I'm there.
Yeah. Cool. We just have a few minutes. Let's go time for one last question from online or here. Were you about to hold up the questions? Oh,
Nick has a
Nick has a
question.
question, yeah. If you yell, I think it works.
Okay, a really stupid question. Do you think of like all of the expenses you have in terms of trees? So when someone asks for a pay raise or you want to buy a math book or do a summer party, you think like, that's gonna be like 2,000 trees. We're not doing that.
No, we don't do that.
Good.
Make your case. How will this get the 2,000 trees that it costs to give it to you? Yeah. Okay. Well, we have a couple of kind of wrap up things, but first a big round of applause for. Thank you so much for joining us, even though you actually couldn't come in person. We really, really, really appreciate it. Yeah, and it's been wonderful to kind of follow you a little bit on the journey that at least some of us have known you for some years, and see you in this position and have you speak with us tonight. It's really amazing to see. Yeah, and I love this mission that you have of helping others to achieve things, helping others to grow, empowering others. I think it's really admirable and really quite one of those altruistic purposes, even if sometimes it doesn't always need to be. Would you like to say something, Naz?
Just thanks a lot for organizing. I wish I was there in person, but next time, hopefully.
Thank you.
And enjoy the